It's story time!
Today's story is Tree Story.
Many years ago, in a quiet forest, lived the Sycamore family. Grandfather Sycamore was one of the oldest and tallest trees in the forest. He had been there for over 100 years. Grandmother Sycamore had been standing at his side for 90 years. Even though they were surrounded by other family trees, it was obvious that they were the favorites among the birds in the forest. Grandmother would feed them the seeds from her branches. As she fed them, the birds sang songs that were enjoyed by all the other family trees in the forest. Grandmother and Grandfather Sycamore had a son who towered high into the forest sky, just like his father. His wife was at his side. Though she was not quite as tall, still she stretched into the sky. They had 2 children, a son and a daughter, and though their parents were much taller, the kids were growing fast. Then one morning, without any warning, everything changed in the forest forever, when 3 men entered and began to nail signs on some of the trees. One of the signs was nailed right into the heart of Grandfather Sycamore's trunk.
Father, are you all right?
Asked his son.
I'm fine. It's just a splinter, son.
Grandfather, what are they doing?
His grandson asked.
Beats me, Junior.
But Grandfather knew exactly what the men were doing. It was not good news for his family or for the other family trees in the forest. Yet Grandfather believed that his silence would allow his family a few peaceful days before the inevitable. The forest had survived for thousands of years. But what about the birds and all the other animals who made these woods their home? Where would they go? What would they do? A nervous silence was unmistakable in the forest the next morning. Grandfather Birch, the head of the neighboring family tree, began to speak out abruptly. His words were so loud that all the family trees could hear what he was saying.
You can remain silent if that is what you wish. Ignore it if that is what you choose. I refuse to do either.
We protect our little ones, Birch. That is the law of our land.
This is the land of our ancestors, Sycamore. I stand before you deeply rooted within sacred soil. I ask you, my friends, is this land not worth fighting for?
We are deeply rooted, Birch. We cannot run. We cannot hide. Maybe the sign says, no hunting.
Huh! We'll see about that.
Weeks passed by, and the time seemed to move ever so slowly. Then early, one bright sunny morning, more visitors came into the forest. They were different from those who came before them. They were friends of the forest. They had come to save and protect the woods from being destroyed. Finally, after weeks of uncertainty, there was a peaceful calm among the family trees. They believed they had been saved as they watched their guests march in the woods.
Grandfather, what do their signs say?
They're here to save our home, Junior.
The months passed by, and the sense of danger slowly diminished. Now the forest world seemed back to normal. Then early one morning, as the first snowflakes of winter were just starting to touch the ground, the family trees were awakened by the sound of bulldozers entering the forest. The peaceful calm of the past few months quickly faded away. The entire forest was frightened. The animals hurried to seek shelter. But the family trees had nowhere to go. With nowhere to hide, the family trees were stranded. Grandfather Sycamore knew this was the end. Still, Grandfather Birch remained defiant.
I'm not willing to be a coffee table inside the home of some human. Are we just gonna stand here and allow them to uproot our families?
We do not have a choice, Birch.
Everyone has a choice, Sycamore. You've been here 100 years. Don't you care that our little ones won't have that same opportunity?
Of course I care, though I don't know what we can do.
We can continue to grow, Sycamore. Remember the code of our land. Long live the family tree!
As the loggers moved their equipment into position, Grandfather Sycamore was about to say goodbye to his family when a few birds unexpectedly landed on Grandmother Sycamore's branches to gather a stockpile of seeds. Grandfather used the opportunity to wish his flying friends a fond farewell.
Goodbye, my friends. Fly proud and never allow your songs of joy to end.
As the first trees began falling in the background, Grandfather Sycamore used the remaining moments to say farewell to his family.
As the head of this family, it has been my responsibility to protect you from whatever Mother Nature had us withstand. From her cold winters to her hot summers and strong winds, whatever she threw at us, we survived her. Today I ask you to be as proud of yourselves as I am of you. So be strong, and always remember, long live the family tree.
Moments later, the loggers came to the site the Sycamore family had called home for so many years. Chainsaws in hand, they approached Grandfather Sycamore first. As they got ready to bring down the old tree, a strong wind suddenly kicked up. The force of the wind swayed the family trees from side to side. Then just as quickly as it started, the wind died down. Grandfather Birch said farewell to his longtime friend.
Goodbye, my friend. You're a great leader and a fine tree. I only wish there was something we could have done.
Grandfather Sycamore's family and those friends that remained standing watched in horror as the old tree began to fall to the ground. It seemed that Grandfather Sycamore had been in the forest forever, yet it only took a matter of minutes to end 100 years of history. Grandmother Sycamore watched them load Grandfather on a log truck parked nearby. As the truck rolled off into the distance and out of sight, she was certain that she had seen him for the last time. She was not even aware that they had begun to cut down Grandfather Birch. The sun was setting quickly. The moonlight was all that illuminated the forest by the time the men had finished cutting Grandfather Birch down to the ground. The animals had abandoned the homeland. Gone forever, they had moved on. To who knows where? When the workers had gone that evening, all that remained were a few family trees left standing in a bare, cold, and lonely field. It was up to Grandmother Sycamore to protect her family that night. She did what she had to do, comforting her children and grandchildren.
Your grandfather will become a fine cabinet, or perhaps a bookcase,
she said in a soft, creaky voice.
If the men come back tomorrow for the rest of us, we must believe we will be together again some day.
Grandmother Sycamore believed that all of the animals had gone away, but she suddenly realized that was not quite true. She discovered that snakes had taken over what was left of her homeland.
So sad. So sad.
Hissed the snakes.
But we are saving seeds and cones to save the forest.
Save the forest?
Grandmother Sycamore asked.
How are you going to do that?
If we can save your seeds, after a while, the forest will grow again, and we will live like before.
Grandfather Sycamore, meanwhile, was having a surprisingly good time on the logging truck.
Oh, look! Is that a train?
He said to himself.
I've heard their whistles, but I never knew what they looked like. And there are so many cars, so many people. And look at the buildings. They're not all made out of family trees after all.
4 days later, after riding many miles and resting at truck stops, Grandfather Sycamore arrived at a lumber yard. In the middle of the yard was a huge building. It was a lumber mill. Once inside the lumber mill, Grandfather Sycamore was surprised when he noticed that his old friend Grandfather Birch had been stacked nearby.
Birch, is that you?
It's me, Sycamore.
Good to see you, my friend. Very good to see you.
How long do you think they'll keep us here?
I don't know.
I miss my family, but we don't even know that they'll bring them here anyway.
I wonder if there are other family trees here, Birch.
Grandfather Sycamore looked around the warehouse, hoping to spot other family trees from his forest. When he didn't recognize any, he called out to see if any would answer.
I am Grandfather Sycamore, and I am looking for family trees from my forest.
A whispery voice responded from far off in the distance.
Long live the family tree.
Who is that?
It's Grandmother Spruce.
How are you, Grandmother?
Scared.
Just then, a log truck drove into the warehouse. When it came to a stop, the workers quickly started to unload the bed. As the logs come rolling down, Grandfather spotted Grandmother Sycamore among them. He saw with a mix of regret and delight that his son and his son's wife were also among the logs. But Grandfather Sycamore was alarmed when the last few logs came off the truck bed. His grandchildren were not among them.
Grandmother Sycamore!
Grandfather, where are you?
I'm over here. Where are our grandchildren? I do not see them.
What do we do, Father? My children! I'm afraid for my children.
Grandfather Sycamore's son exclaimed.
We are all sad, my son. At least we are mostly together to share a few more hours or days.
The days that followed seemed so drawn out for the Sycamore family. As each log truck entered the lumber mill, Grandfather eagerly watched as it was unloaded, but none of them included his grandchildren. He knew in his heart that time was running out. It had been 2 weeks since the family trees had arrived at the lumber mill. Nevertheless, on this day, everything seemed to be changing. Grandfather Sycamore had a strange feeling. Somehow he knew this would be their last day at the mill.
Grandmother, I've had a strange feeling all morning. I believe that this will be our final day.
Hopefully you're wrong, Grandfather.
As the day went on, it became clear that Grandfather Sycamore was right about his feeling. The workers in the mill hustled to manufacture the lumber as though they were on a deadline for final shipment. As they whittled Grandfather Birch down into small planks, he shouted out to the other family trees.
We will not be denied, my friends! Long live the family tree! Eternally! Forever! Forevermore!
And in chorus, the family trees echoed the same words to Grandfather Birch.
Long live the family tree! Forevermore!
It began to seem as though that final day in the lumber mill would be the last time the family trees would ever be together again. However, weeks later, the Robinson family moved into their new house. The movers carefully took a grandfather clock from out of the moving van. As they carried it toward the house, it quickly became obvious that this clock was Grandfather Sycamore in his new form. They carefully carried the Grandfather Sycamore clock inside the house. As they set it down on the floor, Grandfather Sycamore became aware of a coffee table located nearby. He was astonished to discover that it was none other than his old friend Grandfather Birch.
Birch, is that really you?
It's me, and it's just like I told you, Sycamore. A coffee table inside of someone's house. There really is no justice.
But it could be worse. You could be here by yourself.
Yes, and now I'm going to have to listen to you chiming at all hours of the day and night.
Birch grumbled, but he smiled as he said it. A month after the Robinson family had moved into their new house, their son was in the front yard playing baseball with some of his new friends. The baseball bat that they used was made out of Grandson Sycamore. One of the kids pitched the baseball to the Robinson boy. As he swung the bat, it flew out of his hand, soared through the air, and struck the wood siding on the Robinsons' house. When he hit the house, Grandson Sycamore heard a loud scream. Ah! He swiftly realized that he had smacked up against Grandmother Sycamore.
Grandmother, it's so good to see you. I'm sorry about smacking up against you. I didn't mean to. What I mean is, that human threw me, and then I hit you.
I know, Junior. I saw it happen. You know, I can't believe you're a baseball bat. Is that the best the humans could do with you?
It's not so bad, Grandmother. I could think of worse things to be. There's so much to tell you. Everyone is here.
Grandfather?
Grandfather's here. I saw him in the house. And believe it or not, he's a clock.
A clock? Your grandfather's a clock? He was never much on time, you know. What about your father, Junior?
Father's here, in the house. He's part of the bunk beds that this kid sleeps in.
What about your mother?
Mom's here, too. She's one of the cabinets in the kitchen. And Grandfather Birch is here. He's a coffee table.
Birch is a coffee table? That is the last thing that he wanted to be.
I know. You should have been there the other night. That kid spilled juice all over him. I thought Grandfather Birch was going to explode. Boy, was he mad.
What about your sister?
I haven't seen her.
More and more of the family trees were found as time went by. Grandmother Birch was part of the fence at a neighborhood house. The remaining members of Grandfather Birch's family were on display at different locations throughout the neighborhood. Except for Granddaughter Sycamore, all of the family trees had turned up. Then one afternoon, the Robinsons' daughter returned home from school. She tripped over the baseball bat that her brother had left in the front yard. Her books went flying everywhere. One of the books landed on top of the baseball bat. That book was the family tree. Grandson Sycamore was shocked to discover that his sister had become a copy of the book.
Sis, is that you?
Don't look at me!
Why?
I feel so dirty. They put ink all over me. It's so disgusting. Now all of the family trees were back together again. The birds from the forest had found Grandmother Sycamore, and they would land on the roof of the house and visit her quite often. The birds had saved some of the seeds from Grandmother Sycamore's branches, and they planted them at her new house.
The new forest is growing quite nicely,
The birds told her.
You've got another generation of sycamores and birches and spruces and many, many others sharing with us, just as you used to do.
The seeds began to grow as the years passed, and as they grew, a new family tree took root and leaf.
Thanks for coming this evening. I'm sorry we had to hold this meeting so late. We had to wait until the Robinsons and the rest of the neighborhood had gone to bed.
What about that narrator, Grandfather? Is she sleeping too? I don't hear her.
No, Junior, I sent her home, told her that the story was over.
Good move, Sycamore. I was having serious problems with her facts about our forest.
Don't be so hard on her, Birch. I'm sure she was only reading what the author wrote.
Well, then I suppose that my problem is with the writer, Grandmother.
Grandfather, since you sent that narrator home, don't you think that you should set up the scene for the folks?
No, Junior. The narrator had already done that before she left. Remember, she said the seeds began to grow as the years passed.
Precisely, Sycamore. That is what she said. The years have passed. So why are we here?
Birch, when I was a young sapling in the forest, I would gaze into the sky at the clouds. I loved those clouds. I'd always believed that one day I would be able to touch those clouds.
Quite touching, Sycamore. You didn't bring us out here to tell us about the clouds, did you?
No, Birch, that's not why I brought you out here. As you know, the other day the Robinsons had a visitor. He was trying to sell them aluminum siding.
Are they going to cover me in aluminum, Grandfather?
I don't know, Grandmother. The only thing that I do know is that Mrs. Robinson seemed to be strongly against the idea.
I like her. She seems so nice.
When the man left, I started to think. It's not about the aluminum siding. None of us know where we will end up or what we will end up as.
Sycamore, we cannot run. We cannot hide. Remember? You said it yourself in the forest.
Yes, Birch, and I do have my regrets. Look at me. I'm a clock. And look at the rest of us.
Yeah, look at the rest of us. I'm this stupid book with this stupid ink all over me.
Well, look at me. I've quickly become that kid's favorite bat. I'm feeling pretty secure.
None of us are secure, Junior. What if he breaks you? Would you still be his favorite bat? Don't you know that aluminum bats are becoming quite popular these days?
Personally, I'd like to be recycled.
Yes, and if that kid spills juice on me one more time, I'd like to recycle him.
Birch, is that really necessary?
What about this meeting, Sycamore? Necessary?
What do you suggest, Birch?
I have no suggestions.
What has happened to the tree that I knew in the forest for all of those years?
That tree ended up in a lumber mill, Sycamore. Now, if you'd really like a suggestion, allow me to make just one. I say we disconnect your chime. You see, if you weren't chiming at all hours of the day and night, maybe I could get some sleep.
Hey, can you keep it down out there? We're trying to get some sleep in here.
Great. It's Mr. Robinson. Nothing personal, Sycamore, but I believe your meeting has just come to an end.
Yes, I believe so, Birch.
But just for the record, Sycamore, I do respect what you were trying to do. But you see, even in our new form, we are all still the same. Good night, my friends. And you must always remember, long live the family tree.
The end. Finally.
Hey, Grandfather, there's that narrator again. I thought you sent her home.
I did, Junior.
Well, how come I can hear her?
I had her record that before I sent her home.